In 1937, a red line was drawn across a map of Kalamazoo. That line determined who would receive investment, who would be denied opportunity, and who would be left behind. Nearly a century later, many residents are still living inside the consequences of that decision. And most people have no idea that line was ever drawn. Welcome to Justice with Jen, Housing, Courts, and Systems of Power. I'm your host, Jennifer Dayton, writer, civil rights advocate, and founder and executive director of the Kalamazoo Justice Project. On this podcast, I read and reflect on essays about housing and justice, local governance, and the systems that shape how people live in our communities. Many of the stories I tell come from my own experience, but they are also a part of a much larger system that affects thousands of people. This episode is titled Episode 1, Roots of Housing and Justice. Before I tell you my personal story, you need to understand the history that shaped the city I live in. Because what many people experience today didn't happen by accident. It was built. The story. Long before I dreamed of building my own small business from the ground up with my hands, heart, and savings, I knew something was deeply off in Kalamazoo. Beneath the surface, something about the way people lived, moved, and were treated just didn't add up. And the deeper I looked into the systems around me, housing, justice, and local city governance, the more I realized my experience wasn't isolated. It was a part of a pattern. What I'm still living through today is connected to something much older. The legacy of housing discrimination in Kalamazoo. But to truly understand how we got here, we have to start at the beginning. Before I tell you my story, you need to hear the one that built the ground we're standing on. Kalamazoo, two cities in one. Kalamazoo is often painted as a city full of promise, a place where kids can go to college for free, where creativity thrives, where new development is constantly on the rise. But walk just a few blocks in the wrong direction, and you'll see something very different. Cracked sidewalks, boarded up homes, over-policed corners, generational poverty, housing instability, fear. The truth is that Kalamazoo has always been a city divided by race, divided by class, and divided by a quiet but powerful system that decided who belongs where. What is redlining? In the 1930s, the federal government began working with banks to map neighborhoods across the country. These maps labeled neighborhoods as good or bad investments. This process became known as redlining. Neighborhoods marked as undesirable were literally outlined in red on official maps. And undesirable usually meant predominantly Black communities, immigrant communities, or working class neighborhoods, even when those neighborhoods were thriving. In 1937, Kalamazoo was redlined. Neighborhoods like Northside, Edison, and Eastside were marked. Once those lines were drawn, the consequences followed quickly. Banks denied loans, city investment dried up, home values plummeted, and residents, overwhelmingly Black and brown, were cut off from opportunity. Why this still matters. Redlining was officially outlawed in 1968, but its effects didn't disappear. Those same neighborhoods still experience the consequences today. Disinvestment, underdevelopment, outdated infrastructure, housing code enforcement that often feels more punitive than protective, and residents who are still systematically displaced. The line may have been erased from the map, but it was never erased from policy. Many renters and low-income families in Kalamazoo today are still living inside the aftermath of those original red zones. A system built to fail. As someone who tried to build something meaningful in this city, I've come to understand something difficult. The system wasn't designed to support everyone equally. In many ways, it was designed to hold certain people in place. What was once done through redlining maps and mortgage denial now shows up in different forms. Discriminatory housing practices, ignored code violations, unchecked landlord power, local agencies that are ineffective or sometimes complicit, and leadership that can feel more performative than protective. In my own situation, I've referred to it as the HUD hustle game, a system where money moves through programs and government entities that rarely seem to protect the people they were meant to serve. My story is coming. I didn't end up in this fight overnight. Before I ever filed a complaint, before I ever faced discrimination or retaliation, before I understood how deep the silence around these issues runs in Kalamazoo, I was just a resident, a dreamer, a builder. More than a year before I stepped into the housing situation that would change everything, I started a small business called Homecrest & Company. It was a labor of love, a creative vision rooted in care, community, and courage. And in the next episode, I'll tell you how that story began. From the very first spark of the idea to the long nights and relentless belief that went into building it. But I wanted you to know this history first, because what happened to me didn't come from nowhere. It came from a system that has been shaping this city for nearly a century. Thank you for listening to Justice with Jen, Housing, Courts, and Systems of Power. If you'd like to read the full essay behind this episode, you can find it on my Substack. And if you'd like to follow this series, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Next time, I'll share the story behind Homecrest & Company, creating light in a city that wanted darkness. Until then, thank you for being here.